What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here with Darium's Competitive Pokemon. Today, we are going to be counting down the top 5 A-Specs ever released. A-Specs are super powerful trainer item cards originally released in 2012 in the Boundaries Cross set. They continue to be released throughout 2013 in the Plasma Block sets as well. A-Specs are very powerful trainer item cards. They were so powerful you could only play one in each of your decks. Not one of each A-Spec, only one total. So you had to choose your A-Spec carefully in order to craft the best strategy possible for your deck. However, A-Specs are still legal in the expanded format. Even though they've rotated out of standard, they're still a very essential part of building expanded format decks. So I wanted to go over them before we get diving into the expanded part of the season ahead of us, since they are going to be playing a big part of the deck building strategies for expanded format. We're going to be covering 7 A-Specs in total. I have top 5, what I consider to be the most competitive, best A-Specs in the expanded format, but I have 2 honorable mentions that I'd like to talk about as well, just because they are powerful cards with powerful effects. The first A-Spec we're going to be talking about is Up Cyclone. This is one of my honorable mentions, not in the top 5. Honorable mention number 1, Up Cyclone. Up Cyclone is an A-Spec. You can only put one A-Spec card in your deck. It says that right there on the side. And the effect of the item is put one of your Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your hand. So that is an automatic Super Scoop Up. I mean, Super Scoop Up, same exact text on the card basically, except you don't have to flip. Super Scoop Up, you have to flip. This card, you don't. This card was really good in Landorus Crobat. It can be used in Seismitoad Crobat as well. I mean, this card is really good just for resetting cards with abilities. There is this new Kartana GX that's coming out, and I think that when you play it from your hand to your bench, you get to automatically remove a special energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's a really good ability. Scoop Up Cyclone could be played alongside that Kartana GX, right, to get to reuse the ability. Just think of Scoop Up Cyclone can allow you to reuse abilities, allows you to totally heal a Pokemon that has taken damage in play. If you have like a big basic Pokemon with a ton of damage on it, you could just use Scoop Up Cyclone, bring the entire card back up into your hand with all the energy, all the tools attached, and lay them right back down to to continue attacking. This paired very well with cards like Landorus and Seismitoad EX because they both only required 1 energy to attack, and they both had 180 hit points. So they were beefy Pokemon. They could soak a hit. You'd play Scoop Up Cyclone, pick the Pokemon up and the energy attached. Maybe you'd promote a Crobat or something like that, retreat for free, and then continue attacking with your big basic Pokemon. Scoop Up Cyclone is not really being played in too many competitive lists right now, but it is a powerful A-Spec with a powerful effect, and it definitely has potential heading into the future. My second honorable mention A-Spec is G-Booster. G-Booster is in the honorable mentions because even though it was powerful, it is no longer super relevant to expanded format. G-Booster is a special A-Spec that can only be attached to Genesect EX. Well, that's a lie. It can be attached to anybody, but it only works if it's attached to Genesect EX because the clause above that powerful G-Booster attack you see says that the Genesect EX this card is attached to can also use the attack on this card. That means that nobody else can use the attack on this card. So this card was really cool. It was used in Virizion Genesect archetype, and it gave Genesect a big one-hit knockout attack that could knock out any EX Pokemon back in the day a few years ago. Now, 200 damage is not quite as relevant now as it used to be. There are Pokemon GX and even Mega Pokemon EX with way more than 200 hit points, so it's not quite the one-hit knockout attack it used to be. You see, the attack does 200 damage. It says discard 2 energy attached to this Pokemon. This attack's damage isn't affected by any effects on the defending Pokemon, so that was pretty cool because it could get around things like, Jolteon's Flash Ray. It could get around Sigilyph, had this protection ability that allowed you to not take damage from Pokemon EX. It could get through things like that as well. It totally negated all effects on the defending Pokemon, which was super neat. However, it's just kind of irrelevant now since Virizion Genesect is just a deck that has been power creeped out of expanded format and is no longer a big deal. So G-Booster is my second card for the honorable mentions. Moving on to the top 5. Our number 5 A-Spec is Rock Guard. Rock Guard is a tool card as well. It's an item tool, and its effect is going to be pretty familiar for those of you that have been playing in the last year or two. It reads, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is your active Pokemon and is damaged by an opponent's attack, even if the Pokemon is knocked out, put 6 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon. So this is just like Bursting Balloon, right? Except this A-Spec does not flee after the turn that you put it into play. So Rock Guard stays attached to the Pokemon that you attached it to, and anytime somebody attacks into it, it deals 6 damage counters. Rock Guard was really good in Seismitoad Crobat. There was this Seismitoad Manectric Crobat deck that finished in the top 8 of the national championships in 2015. It was played in that deck, and it was really good in there. And it was good in there because you would use Item Lock with Seismitoad EX, you would Quaking Punch, you would attach Rock Guard, and then any Pokemon of your opponents that attacked into that Seismitoad would take 6 damage counters, and you could play Super Scoop Up and scoop the Toad right back up with the Rock Guard in hand and lay it right back down to reuse it. So even if your Toad did take damage, you could just flip heads on Super Scoop Up and bring this thing right back into your hand and lay it back down to reuse over and over again. It was just super, super annoying to get through because the opponent couldn't really remove it unless they were able to knock it off with a Xerosic, which is a supporter that they probably only played one copy of. They were out of luck. So they had to hit into Rock Guard and just deal with that 6 damage counters every time they hit into the Seismitoad, and then combined with the Super Scoop Up was just super annoying. Rock Guard, not really too competitive in today's expanded format. You could throw this thing on a Trevenant if you wanted to, which would be pretty, cute because they can't really remove it from Trevenant either unless they Guzma up a non-Trevenant Pokemon and then Field Blower or something like that. So it could be mildly annoying if attached to your Trevenants, but this thing, not super, super competitive and expanded, but it is a powerful card and could find a niche somewhere in the future, possibly. So that's why I have it at my number 5 card on my top 5 A-Specs of all time. Moving on to number 4, we have Life Dew. Life Dew is a super cool tool card as well. You'll see a lot of these A-Specs are tool cards, and the effect of Life Dew reads, if the Pokemon card this is attached to is knocked out, your opponent takes 1 fewer prize card. So if this was attached to, say, a Joltik in Night March, and your opponent knocked that Joltik out, they wouldn't take a prize card. If it was attached to a Marshadow in Night March and they knocked out your Marshadow, they would only take 1 prize card. So it decreases the amount of prize cards your opponent takes for knocking out your own Pokemon. Super cool item card. It's really good in decks like Night March that just are going to wear tools and like focus, Fighting Fury Belt, like Choice Band. I mean, you could throw a Life Dew on this thing and it just decreases the rate at which your opponent takes their prizes. Usually your opponent is just going to be mowing down Night Marchers turn after turn. A Life Dew attached to one of your Night Marchers could be pretty good. Now, however, the weakness of Life Dew and, like Rock Guard, is that it can be removed with tool removal cards before it ever gets to really take effect. So, that is kind of the weakness of the last few cards. A lot of them are tools and they can be removed. However, with cards like Eco Arm, in existence, with cards like Puzzle of Time, you can bring the Life Dew back, which will make it super annoying. This thing goes really good in Sableye Garbodor as well, because Sableye can junk hunt this thing right back into its hand, making it just almost impossible for the opponent to take the appropriate amount of prizes they need to win the game before decking out. So this card is super powerful. The fact that it can be brought back from the discard pile just means that it can be played over and over again and can be super annoying for the opponent to chew through. I mean, eventually they're going to run out of tool removal cards, right? So Life Dew, pretty cool A-Spec card. That's why I have it at the number 4 spot. Wasn't really in too many super competitive decks. I should mention it was in Tool Drop as well. Tool Drop is a deck that might make a comeback coming up here, especially with that Trashlands Garbodor coming out, but that's for a different video. Moving on to the number 3. I really think that the top 3 A-Specs that I have are very, very powerful, are very, very relevant, and are very, very competitive, and I'd expect to see one of these 3 in most of the decks that you play. Number 3 is Scramble Switch. Scramble Switch is just an awesome A-Spec card. This thing is so cool. I played it in quite a few decks in the past, but it really is kind of the hallmark card of one archetype in particular right now, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Scramble Switch is an item card that reads, switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. Then you may move as many energy attached to your old active Pokemon to the new active Pokemon as you like. This card goes great in Primal Groudon EX decks. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Primal Groudon is a super slow deck. I mean, you're going to start out using Tropical Beach, turn after turn, filling your hand up to 7, promoting things like Wobbuffet, Robo Substitute to try and slow your opponent down and, you know, hopefully just give you enough time to build up, finally get one Primal Groudon going, right? And you're probably going to slap a Focus Sash on this thing so that it can't get knocked out in one hit. So your opponent is going to plow into your Primal Groudon after Groudon finally comes out. Hopefully he takes 2 prizes, takes a big one-hit knockout somewhere. Your opponent's going to smack into Primal Groudon once, and then your goal is to Scramble Switch all the energy off that Groudon right onto a fresh Primal Groudon that you have on the bench and start attacking with the fresh one as well, and hopefully take 2 more prize cards, right? And then you could do things, cute things like Max Potion the Primal Groudon that you Scramble Switched off of. Super cool. This card was also played in some Virizion Mewtwo decks back in the day. This was a pretty cool inclusion in that archetype. I played it in my Virizion Mewtwo list. I thought Virizion Mewtwo was just a super fun deck to play, and it was kind of the more popular variant of, you know, Virizion before Virizion Genesect got really big. Really before Muscle Band came out, Virizion Mewtwo kind of was the way to build that deck. But Virizion Mewtwo did kind of see some success with this card in it, you know, back when that deck was relevant. But now, like I said, Primal Groudon is going to be that primary, you know, user of this very powerful, you know, card. Not only does it switch your energy, it also acts as a switch card, gets you out of special conditions, gets you out of the active position, you know, preserves your energy. Just a very powerful card. Good for, you know, it could be used in basic decks as well that just have, you know, want to heal off their Pokemon and transfer their energy somewhere else. I mean, imagine you could use this thing in a Guardy deck too if you wanted to, though I don't necessarily recommend it because there are 2 better A-Specs that I'm about to cover that would go way better in an archetype like that. So moving on to number 2, we have Dowsing Machine. Now, some people would argue with me that this would belong at the number 1 spot. However, it doesn't. It is the number 2 A-Spec, but it is still very good in its own right. Dowsing Machine reads, discard 2 cards from your hand. If you can't discard 2 cards, you can't play this card. Put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. So it basically gives you an extra copy of whatever trainer card you have in your discard pile. Is super cool because you could just play it, discard 2 other cards, and retrieve a trainer card out of your discard pile. So this is very useful in decks that have limited resources or decks that want to reuse resources that they have in their discard pile. So this could be used, it used to be used in decks like Blastoise and Raybor that wanted to get a 5th copy of their superior energy retrieval. You can only play 4 of a card in your deck, but with Dowsing Machine, it allows you to potentially play a 5th, which is really powerful. It's also being used in some Darkrai EX, Darkrai GX decks because it gives you a 5th Dark Patch. It could be a 5th Max Elixir. It can be an additional copy of Hypnotoxic Laser. The cool thing about Dowsing Machine is that it makes your one-of items go further as well. You could play 1 copy of Field Blower, and then if you're playing against a Garbodor deck, Dowsing Machine means that you could Field Blower twice in a matchup, even though you only play 1 copy. So it's cool being able to reuse your trainer cards. It also is nice because it picks the trainer card out of your discard pile. So you're not thinning it out of your deck. You're still leaving resources in your deck. You're picking it out of the discard pile to reuse it. So this card, very good for just improving, you know, the resource management in some decks. It is not the speedy, fast turn 1 card. A lot of times you don't want to see Dowsing Machine on the first turn of the game. You want to see it after you've played a few turns and you have some useful items in the discard pile. It's also being used in Night March in some Night March lists because it can allow you to get a 5th Battle Compressor against decks that play Karen. It can allow you to get a 5th Puzzle of Time so that you can play multiple Puzzle of Time plays, and could just be very powerful in that regard as well in a deck like Night March. So Dowsing Machine, super powerful card, but it is not the best A-Spec ever released. We leave that to the famous Computer Search. Computer Search is a crazy good card. Originally released in the base set, Computer Search has been around for a long time. However, it has not been legal, until this print that was made in Boundaries Crossed. It hadn't been legal since, forever ago, back in the Wizard of Coast era. Decks used to play 4 copies of Computer Search before it was an A-Spec. The answer to many people's question, can I use the old base set Computer Search? No, you cannot. You have to use the one that says A-Spec on it, and this thing fetches a pretty penny. It is like a $90 to $100 card right now, which is totally nuts, because I just still have my copy lying around. Look how beat up this thing is. Look at this. This is going to make some people cry. Oh my gosh. That's because this Computer Search has been in almost every, expanded list that I have run since 2012. So this thing has seen quite a bit. It's got some battle scars, but it still has a crazy killer effect. Let's talk about it. Computer Search reads, discard 2 cards from your hand. If you can't discard 2 cards, you can't play this card. Search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. The thing about Computer Search is that it is good in everything. You can literally put this card in any deck and it won't be bad. It is a live card as soon as you draw into it. It's just an ultimate consistency card. Sometimes you find yourself doing things like computer searching just for a Pokemon, but that's the great part about it. You can use it like an Ultra Ball. You could search for a Pokemon. You could search for that game-winning item. You could search for that game-winning supporter. On the first turn of the game, it's a bail out. It's a supporter out. So if you started a dead hand, Computer Search will bail you out of it. If you need, a Guzma at the end of the game, Computer Search can get that for you. It helps you complete card combinations. I mean, if you need DCE Lysander to win a game and you top deck Computer Search, there's always this moment of excitement like, oh, I got my Computer Search. I can win the game. I can get what I need. It goes really well in decks that try to pull off the Maxie's engine or the Archie's engine. It's a staple in Jacob Van Wagner's 2015 Archie's Blastoise list that he used to win the World Championships. I remember watching him play against Seismitoad in the finals, and he had to get his turn 1 Archie's Blastoise, pretty much every game in order to even contend. And he's setting up, and he's wondering if he's going to hit, the turn 1 Blastoise, and he draws into his Computer Search, and he starts nodding his head like, I got it, I know I got it, because Computer Search just helps you complete card combinations. It is such a big consistency boost to so many decks, and it's just an all-around incredible card. That's why it costs $100 right now, because almost every expanded deck plays this thing, and it is just good in everything. And it's always good when you draw into it. There's almost never a time when Computer Search is bad, maybe off of an end of 1, because you only have 2 cards in your hand. But if you have a Rangaroo in play, Rangaroo for 1, Computer Search for that game-winning card, and you're good to go. So Computer Search is the best A-Spec ever released. I mean, the only competition really for this thing is Dowsing Machine. Those are your big 1-2 A-Spec cards. So let me know what you all think about the A-Specs and about my countdown in the comments below. Thank you all for watching the video. Good luck to all of you heading to the Fort Wayne Regional Championships this weekend. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Comment, like I said, like the video. Peace.